Welcome to another Founder Wisdom Pod. We have Sharon Lipovsky with us. She is an executive coach and team accelerator at Point Road Studios. That's her own company. She's founded the company more than a decade ago. She's also a podcaster. We're going to have fun talking about coach stuff today, executive coaching stuff, that is. This pod is presented to you by podpair.com. If you want to start your own podcast, podpair.com is the place to go. Sharon, welcome to the pod. Tell me a bit more about
Yes.
yourself and what you're up to
Yes.
nowadays.
Thanks for having me. Well, a bit more about me. I live on a dirt road in the Catskills in New York. Outside of executive coaching, I'm a mom to three lovely children and partnered up with a great person. And in terms of the people that listen to your podcast, I always like to say when I think about founders and CEOs, that it is my deep belief that out in how we are reimagining the future of work, that if we can center around vision, yes, vision for our companies and what we want, but also vision for the teams that we build, giving space for the human beings at work, that is where magic happens. So I could say more, but I'll leave it at that.
And how does life feel for you nowadays?
Oh, so what a beautiful question. Life feels, well, it feels like a polarity. There are parts of life that feel quite overwhelming. So, on a personal level, I'm in a deep but also clear process on releasing stuff, internal stuff, external stuff, and doing that as it, in my business, but also for a family of five. And so it's just layers of systems and people, all of which I care deeply about those things and especially those people. So that's the part of my life that can sometimes ride the wave that feels a little edgier, a little less fun. And at the same time, the core foundation upon which my business and my family and my life stand is really brilliant and lovely and of my own design and choices. And so being in that space sometimes of overwhelm is countered by knowing that what I'm after is also what I'm choosing and what I really want. So yeah, that's the truth. It's not always sunshine and rainbows. There's some really hard stuff I'm processing through, but also feels worth it.
Yeah, I've been sick for the past 2 to 3 weeks. I think I'm better now,
Mm,
but yeah, it's been this virus and it takes off 10% of my energy and on 100 meetings per week schedule, that 10% is
yeah.
like way too much. So yeah, it was kind of uncomfortable because usually I'm like always on the go but I've also felt recently that I've been plateauing in some shape and form. I've also quizzed my LinkedIn audience and it seems that a bunch of people are burned out. So I'm kind of observing that, the market that and life, although I'm sort of disconnected here in Oaxaca. Thank God, because I think I'd burn out if I wasn't like in the mountains here chilling, doing what I love on a daily basis, apart from my startup. So yeah, I felt some of that as well. And then the testosterone in me is like, yo, you're not growing fast enough. um you don't have the full energy, and brings all these questions, and I'm
Mm.
like, oh, I should be going faster, I should be making more. Like, what should be the mindset here? Should I just like reflect more, journal more? Should I be patient? What should be the outlook here?
Well, uh, can I throw on a coaching hat? And because, of course, I can't answer that question for you. I could give you my best thinking of when people in general are facing that, but I think it would be more fun and delightful to go to you. Game?
Game.
Okay, beautiful. So, first, just an observation, and you're going to tell me where I'm wrong because I could be for sure, and I'm not attached to being right. So, my observation is that it feels genuine, as in the trained listener in me is believing you when you say you want more. Like there's all these things that you were shoulding on, right? Like I should do this and I should do that and I should do this. Well, what it was after is really not bigger necessarily, but more and faster. And also just feeling like you were able to put your full 100% energy forward in the direction of the thing that you want. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of me being spread thin, but I guess that minus 10% really affected me because normally, to me, happiness in life, well, there's two things. I guess it's like improving 1% on a daily basis. I really like that. Lately, I haven't felt that. And the other thing that I reflected upon this weekend is happiness to me is having an idea and executing on that idea. I'm
Mm.
obsessed with that, like me
Mhm.
checking box feels really good to my brain.
Mhm.
And I have not been doing enough of that. I have not been creative. I've been just like a robot going through the motions in the past 2 to 3 weeks, which really annoys me. So that's my core annoyance. And you're also
Yeah.
right, like being spread thin.
Yeah. So let's do a little play for a moment on looking back. So because it's feels fresh, your sounds like maybe coming out of it, but still very close to, gosh darn it, I'm missing that 10%. And you know why? You've been sick, you've had a virus. Still sucks. You wish you didn't have it, but it happened. And it's going to happen again, whether it will take a different shape or form, but that's the reality for all human beings. We get thrown and we're not at 100% all of the time. So, with that in mind, if you were to go back right now, what you saw was you were still putting out, again, you'll tell me where I'm wrong, 90%. You were still going the full 90% you could have that you had. And that got you through your 100 meetings a week. So you were able to do the foundation of the commitments that you've put out. And what you missed was kind of this creative on top of that, where you're seeing the full fruition of ideas beyond the 90%, the 100 meetings a week. Again, let me pause on that for a moment. Tell me where I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's true. And I would add on top of that, it's my identity as a biohacker, someone that's never sick, that's annoyed, plus my core identity is like this founder and this entrepreneur. And I felt that not being 100% and not achieving enough, that got against my core identity, which I guess is my annoyance.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to just introduce a phrase of up until now. So, up until now, your core identity has been as a founder entrepreneur, where to realize that core identity, you must do certain things like have 100 meetings a week and check the boxes on other creative ideas. Fair?
Fair. Yeah, doing
Okay.
extreme shit.
Yeah. So when I say up until now, it just is too, I'm like, you can't hear me so much on the mic, but just imagine like a loud clang, bang, stop. Up until now, that's how you've realized your core identity. Now, in a moment, I'm going to suggest let's choose, does that core identity as realized in that way still serve you moving forward? Let's not answer that yet. But let's go back to looking back on where you're coming from. So where you're coming from in the last 3 weeks is, gosh, this like you were, not only did you not realize your core identity while you were sick, so you didn't get the full, yes, I got the like my brain feels happy, I'm doing it the way I want to do it. And you worked really hard. You still did the 100, in my assessment, you still did the 100 meetings a week. So if you were to change it, so you like, we go back in time, it's 3 weeks ago, you start feeling sick. From your current best thinking, what other choices were available to you 3 weeks ago?
None. Think I did my
Okay.
best. Like, think I gave it all.
Okay. Well, so I'm not questioning if you gave it your all. And it could be that there really was no other choice. Can I just throw out, would it be helpful if I threw out some of the choices that I could imagine might have been there?
Yeah, there's the classic like resting, I guess, but I don't feel good with that.
Yeah. So even so there was another choice. I'm not suggesting you take the other choice, but you could have rested. I'm thinking you could have eliminated some of the meetings, but still had time for the creative projects. Like that could have been a choice. So it could have been a different mix of how you spent the 90%.
Right. Yes, I also feel bad canceling people that goes against my core values. But
Yeah.
yeah, might be wrong on that. Who knows?
Well, so, and again, I'm not here to say what I'm observing right now is without any attachment because we're really just getting to know each other. So, but what I'm observing is that where you're coming from in terms of the choices you're making is that you feel in alignment with your values, and the thing that your values are allowing you to put a backseat to when faced with less time, when not operating at 100%, so that's a flip side of really you had the same time, but less productivity that you could put out in that time because of how you were feeling. The thing that you currently are choosing to put on the back seat are the creative ideas that sit on top of your core commitments. Fair?
Fair. Yeah, it's like
And
these children being angry at like being powerless.
yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's the thing is when the only part of what you're saying that feels not aligned for me, which doesn't mean it's not aligned for you because it sounds like it is that I don't look at the circumstances that you're describing and think you were powerless because you had choices. You were maybe not realistic. Like you like there is a trade-off within there. And again, I'm bringing in a lot of like intuition on what I think could be happening without attachment. But I think for you, it could be that I think there's also a value tug, like there's some value dissonance. It's not it doesn't exactly feel value aligned to not do the things that you didn't do this last 2 or 3 weeks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, if I would have like these systems, which I do, by the way, I do have systems to help me like keep it really. I wouldn't describe it as really high performance, but high performance to my standard. So yeah, the machine keeps on rolling, but yeah, it's like also this brings another interesting topic
Mm,
is like goal setting dissonance.
mhm,
Yeah, I'm not sure what to think of goal setting because by now at this day I should be like a billionaire again, like talking about the shoulds, um,
mhm,
but also projecting a picture of what reality should be like is very different from crafting that reality, especially when it comes to topics like money and scalability and being where you want, right? Like started in entrepreneurship probably like 12 years ago, and which is still a very short time in the game, but it's a really long time. Some other factors considered equal. But yeah, it's this frustration sometimes of like not being where I am in some areas. In other areas, I'm definitely there. In most areas, I think like, yeah, 80%, but some goals are tougher to crack. And it seems I have a frustration when it comes to not meeting these goals. And that's the nature of
mm.
things, isn't it? Like being super hard.
Yeah, and I think it like my wish and when I'm guiding clients to see their vision and what they want is that I believe it's possible to understand where you're coming from, so understand that story, and sometimes come back and revise it. So again, I'm gonna use your example, but discard, I'm not saying you should revise your story, but let's say picking on the part of your story where you said, "Well, I don't wanna cancel on people because that's not aligned with my core values." That was like, "Okay, Charles is doing a quick shutdown on, like, we are not taking up there is no possibility that we're changing up canceling meetings because that's a core part of, like, what matters to you." And there's probably some values underneath that, like consistency or, um, loyalty or honoring commitments, and if you want, you can jump in, but that something in that, there's gonna be some kind of value of why you wanna keep the commitments you've made. One could, who had a similar so you won't be alone in that mindset, one could say, "Well, up until now, it's worked for me to honor my commitment of consistency, honor my value of consistency through keeping appointments that I make." Unless there's an extreme circumstance for which not feeling 100% is not one of them. And one might revise it and say, well, to honor my feeling of consistency, I'm going to make sure that every day starts at 100%, or every day is, let me, this is even, I think this is more realistic, that every day I am designing my day, I'm honoring the commitments of my day to the percentage of how I feel. So on a 90% day, if I had 10, let's just say for easy math, I had 10 meetings, one meeting has to come off. And like that's part of my consistency, is that's how I'm doing it. And you could still honor that value of consistency, but you're doing it in a different systematized way, easy to operationalize, but you're doing it that way. So, point is, you want to connect to your story and understand you can revise it. That's part of the game. Next up, you do want to have a sense of what's inspiring me for where I want to go. Now, there's all kind, and that's the vision. That's a future orientation of what am I working towards? Where am I headed for the sake of what? And there's going to be layers to that. What am I working for in my business? What am I working for in my life? What am I working for in my biohacking, how I want my body to show up, right? All of these different puzzle pieces. So you can say, this is where I want to go and the way I want it to take shape. You will ground that in things like measurable things, which I love, former sales executive, like money, like a number on the scale, like profitability percentage. So like how many meetings I have in a week. So you have these measurable things you can look at. But underneath of that, there's always a something that hits a more emotional note. Just from having coached and guided hundreds of people through their vision. I know this to be true, that it's important to get to the concrete things, but there's something, an undercurrent to it that matters more. So you want to understand what that is. I'm unclear yet when you were feeling that dissonance, exactly what that core is for you, but I was sensing it's something in the, like, you're doing all of this work, like what's showing up on the screen here, 100 sales and 100 plus startups and all of these, all these numbers that show that, like, and it's for the sake of what? Like, there's a thing that you're moving towards in that. So you want to know where you're coming from. You want to know, like, what's really am I after? And then let me ground it in. How do I think it might show up in the course of how I design my days, weeks, months, years? And then based on aligning those two things, that's what we're doing every day. And that, when we do that, we can lead with a sense of purpose and vision. And I think and I believe, and I see it's possible all the time, that then we can start to have more choices on how we adapt so that we're not operating from a place of stuckness or like, well, I guess every time I get sick, it's not going to be the way I want it to be, but I will avoid getting sick as often as possible. And so that's kind of the magic space that I'm always curious about, is how do we align with that story, see and cast out that future vision of where we want to go, but then operate in the here and now in a way that doesn't force us into trading off our sense of well-being. So let me just
Right.
pause on that. I've thrown out a number of different things and just see questions, curiosities, or we can go straight back to coaching around your challenge, which I'm very game to do.
Yeah, I think I had the insight. It's like if you're shooting for the moon, for example, maybe you'll reach like 70% there, and that 70% is really impressive. The problem is when you're seeing half empty,
Mhm.
like 70, the 30% lacking, and that I guess is where my brain is focusing. Oh, you're not meeting your goals, you're not meeting your goals. But yeah,
Mm.
but if you shoot moonshots, which I think there's validity in doing, it's quite inspiring moonshots. My philosophy when it comes to goal setting nowadays, it's that needs to be really rememberable, and you need to connect with an image and an emotion, right? In my case, that's how I think. So, and
Mm.
moonshots are quite rememberable. So yeah, the question and the dissonance is probably not a dissonance. It's just me like going for the moon. So because in my case, also the goal is to surpass, like David Goggins when he says that, yeah, surpassing like your the best version of yourself, and knowing that you were probably meant for something genetically and environmentally for some version of reality, but then like creating such an alternative version of who you could be. I think that's very much the case with myself. I'm started as a young drunk loser, and am what I am to date, and it's quite fascinating to observe that. I'm also happy into all of this, like the numbers, the moonshotting, but I guess, yeah, sometimes there's this half empty mentality when it comes to goal. There's probably comparison as well.
Mm.
I still have problems with comparison, by the way. Like, what's your mental model with that?
Yeah, I mean, let me answer that, and then there's some things you said that I wanna run at if you're game. But in terms of comparison, I think, and actually it connects to what I was really sensing within you, is what's more important than comparison is self-worth. Now, I think there's when you're operating from a place of internal strength, so you're looking to see how you compare, but you're operating in a place where you feel like you can stand upright. You're not knocked off center. So when you're not feeling your best because you're sick, that's not upright. When you've just got a huge blow, like a major contract didn't come in, or there was a complication in something you were working on, that's not you upright. Doesn't mean you couldn't take 3 deep breaths and get upright. Like, there's a lot of ways you can get back to upright quickly. That's resilience. But if you are at a place of being upright, then I think looking to how you compare in the market is smart. That's competitive landscaping. That's understanding, or that, that's competitive landscaping as a human being, or that's competitive landscaping in your business. Great. But when you're not operating at your best and now you're in the comparison, now you're in the judging, it's a real recipe for downward spiraling, and there's no productivity within that. Like, what it's not productive comparison, and so I think I would want a productive comparison. I'm looking out and I'm at a place of strength to learn from it versus I'm not feeling my best and it's distracting me and actually making me feel worse. So that's where what resonates for me. What about you?
Comparison, I think I'm somewhat healthy on that level. There is some levels of unhealthiness with, I don't know, like, and it's like, yeah, unconscious with friends, maybe. Um, yeah, more on that later, but yeah, generally it's competing on a fun and playful level. It's like, okay,
Mm.
you've done
Mhm.
that. That's interesting. I'm coming in as a total outsider, and I'm just gonna try my best at it, which is what I do. Um, Problem becomes when I do that in many areas and I'm spread thin. Like,
Yep.
what's your recommendation in spreading yourself thin or not?
Yeah, well, I'm not well, actually, I'm gonna use the example you were using before as my thought. I think I too love moonshotting in your language. I'm like, yes, like, and as long as your self-worth isn't aligned with, now I have to hit the moon, then moonshotting is great. That is how I as a human being operate, and it has taken me to, like, amazing places. However, if I don't get as fast as I thought or as far as I wanted at the pace that I set, then I don't think, "Oh, I'm a bad person," or I'm judging myself, or it's keeping me up at night. So, on the flip side, if that's not how you're wired, or you get into a place where for whatever reason on that week or day it doesn't feel right, then you have to have the executive capacity to say, "I know how to scale back by choice, not feeling like a victim of it." And when I was thinking of your example of how you were looking at how you've been feeling over the last 2 or 3 weeks when you're not feeling at 100%, what was hitting me when I heard you then replaying it again is, oh, it's so interesting that when you're not feeling at your best, because 'cause you're still not quite at 100%, right? You're getting there, but not like, "I'm back to my full, like, best biohacked self." I think it's easier to get trapped being like, "But here's what I didn't do, and that's a kind of stretching yourself thin versus saying, "Hey, listen, I chose this. I said I'm still gonna honor my commitments, and I know because I'm 90% I won't be there, but I also know I'm gonna get back to 100% because I've got the discipline and focus, and I'm putting those things into place, and I'm not gonna live in this state of 90%. So I'm gonna give myself not a restful time, but lower expectations as I'm still pushing really hard, but lower expectations on what it would be if I was at 100%." And I think that to just notice that when we're not at 100%, it's easier to get trapped looking at the negative. And if we can just, again, catch ourselves, bang, oh, here I am again, not feeling 100% and starting to focus on what's not best. Maybe this isn't the time to be paying attention to that. That it's useful to compare and see what I could have done better, but not when I'm sitting in a place of 90% or less. Does that make
Yeah,
sense?
the metric is sort of not the time in the race, but like if I'm finishing or not, I guess, at this point. And yeah, if I can prevent the immune system going that route next time, so be it. That's also a sign, right? Maybe I was pushing
Mhm.
myself like too hard. Maybe I get sick once a year.
Mhm.
So I mean, my genes aren't the best when it comes to that, but yeah, observing when I'm potentially pushing myself too far, sleep time for sure. Um, and yeah, like there's also an equilibrium when it comes to this. It's like, oh, I don't want to work out today. Should I listen to my body or should I push it? The default is
Yeah.
always push it, right? But yeah, when do you know exactly when you're pushing yourself too far? Is it like bodily awareness? Like, how do you go with that?
Yeah, it's a whole mix of things, including I think, look, body awareness is huge. I I was just talking about this with a really good friend of mine who's a physician out on the West Coast here in the US and has a specialty in integrative health. And what we were reflecting on was kind of like the shadow side of moonshotting. We were talking about it in through the lens of time management and where we notice, like, I'll speak from an I perspective, she identified with this too, of being time optimists. So we were and this is a side track of being the moonshotting. It's like, well, I'm gonna go for it all, and I have all these systems in place, and I get a lot more done than a lot of other people, but I still might not be getting all the things done that I wanted to, and how it's showing up where I might be late for something, or I might like there might be some way that my time management is not seeming optimal, or I'm not getting done as much as I wanted to because I wanted to be at 100% even though I'm feeling less than that. Anyway, the thing that we were observing is what part of it is tied to the way our neurobiology, what part of it is tied to like misalignment of expectations with reality, but also what part of it is that we're actually doing more than we can do. And so I think that's the shadow side of moonshotting is do you get yourself into a place where it's just way beyond what's realistic? And she talked about it through the lens of being a physician and operating in an environment where on a day where she works a part-time schedule, all physicians were told that if they have a scribe with them, so someone who's taking their notes, which is a great hack for a physician. They don't need to be the person writing, but those notes do need to get written in the system that is our medical system here. So if they have a scribe, they now need to see in a half day one more patient than they used to. Mandate across the system that is this health system she's a part of. And she was looking at that and thought, okay, so now I have to see in a half day schedule 12 patients. And and then the place where she works and things that might show up, she just looked and said, this is actually too much. And I'm going to conferences where they're saying, "Hey, physicians, here's the techniques for mindfulness. And here's ways like we care about your mental wellness and we want to make sure and your of course your physical wellness and we want physicians to make sure that you're doing well. And here's we've invested in an app for meditation for you to help because we really care about your mental wellness." And she looked at it and was like, I actually think what could be done for our mental wellness is fewer meetings in the day. So this is a long way of getting to we need discernment and awareness to be able to look at and say, when is the pushing for the moon and like shooting for the moon actually what's called for? And when is shooting for the moon actually distracting ourselves from the fact that we have to travel through so many galaxies and places that we're not even able to address because we're just trying to do too much, go too far with insufficient time that we might land on the moon or land near the moon, but we're going to be so damn tired by the time we get there that what's the point? And so that's, I don't have so here's the answer, everyone. I don't have that other than saying training yourself for discernment, understanding what you want, and having a practice in a way to disrupt your own thought habits so that you can check in and say, is this a moment where I'm pushing too far, or is this a moment where I'm not pushing far enough? That's I think the art.
Love it. Well, Sharon, thanks for today. Where can
You
people
bet.
find out more about you?
Yeah, you can tune into my podcast, Design Yourself, wherever you listen to your podcasts, or you can head over to pointroadstudios.com and you can reach out to me directly there. I would love, and I mean it, to hear from you. I will personally respond. So I would love that.